Trey Smith, number 65, is going to be in camp, but will he be under a tag? I think that he will. Matt Derrick's going to tell you why I'm wrong today on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, Chiefs Kingdom. This is Locked On Chiefs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every single day. You every day as we do it for you. Thank you for subscribing and being with us here on YouTube and on all the audio platforms. You can do that every single day because we produce shows for you. Matt shows up on Wednesdays to give us the lowdown, the inside grease. And this is Matt Derrick from Chiefs Digest. If you don't know him already, I don't know where you've been the last 9 years that we've been doing the show, but Matt's been with us most of the way. I've been here 9. Chris has been here 9. Been covering this team for a lot longer than that. But thank you for joining us. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting, as well as RGR Football and NFL 33. We appreciate you, and we appreciate our friends over at FanDuel because they're sponsoring this show. And right now, you new customers can get $150 back in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So go get in the action at FanDuel. We'll talk more about them in a little bit. I want to talk about championship impact that comes from the right guard as well as the offensive line as a whole in 2025. And yes, I am predicting championship. You guys heard me right. Matt will tell you why I'm nuts. We have to talk short-term strategy versus long-term strategy here, Matt. That's a different scenario in both cases, and I'm really intrigued by that. First, we have to start with just what is Trey Smith's value that is maybe unique to this team that another team doesn't see. You can get all Matt's work at ChiefsDigest.com and Chiefs Digest here on the YouTube platform, as well as 41 is the mic with our friend Nick. Go check them out and make sure you follow up with Matt everywhere else. But that's the question of the day, Matt. This is a big number on the tag, right? And it takes, I think, some carrot to get a player off of that. That carrot, in my mind, has to be a 4-year plus contract. I don't think 3 years gets it done. I don't want to get too deep in the minutia, but like the general parameters of what this deal has to be in order to get done, how do you see it?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, to get out to 23.4 million guaranteed, you got to have a little bit of a carrot, and it is essentially more guaranteed money. And I can see it being a 3-year deal because if you're Trey Smith and you're able to get more guaranteed money, and right now I think the top guaranteed market for the guard is 48 million. So basically, you can say it's 2 years for 24. I mean, if you're Trey Smith, you're looking for more than 48. You're looking to get past that. So, are you looking to get at least 50? 55 is probably the ballpark in which you're talking, and then that makes more, sense over a 3-year deal. And if you're Trey Smith, a 3-year deal means you got a chance to pop out and hit free agency again at 28 and try and get a third contract. So I think there's a situation where a 3-year deal would make sense. I think it could make sense for the Chiefs too, but it really comes down to, whether or not the Chiefs feel like that they can get a deal that they can live with, that is of Trey's liking, that makes sense for them, and trying to figure out how to fit all the other puzzle pieces together in the next 2 years beyond 25. And let's face it, I mean, there's a lot of other scenarios. I mean, one thing that the Chiefs absolutely have to figure out is Trey Smith before they can even begin to worry about Trent McDuffie, George Karlaftis, the future of Travis Kelce, the future of Chris Jones, and restructuring Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, it's a domino effect, and he is the biggest domino right now. It is looming at this point. I think part of the issue for me, though, the reason that this is continuing to drag, I don't think it's just a simple fact of, hey, I got paid, I signed the tag as fast as I could because I don't want to negotiate, or I want them to pay me 120% next year, or I want to go somewhere else. I think his value is unique in Kansas City because of two factors, because of how well he knows Mahomes and because he plays next to Creed Humphrey. He can go somewhere else and be a very good player. Can he be as good in any other offensive line unit than he can playing next to Creed Humphrey? I don't think so. So I think part of the problem is his value is maximized in Kansas City. And there is really no repercussion for the team to say, well, go get your money somewhere else, because I don't think that money's out there. Do you?
It's a good question, because if you're the player, you're certainly right. I mean, you can't just say that it's this case of, if you're Trey Smith, you can go play for any of the other 31 teams and it's as good of a situation. That's not necessarily the case. He certainly would, for another team, be playing next to a worse center, because Creed Humphrey's the best in the league. Could he end up playing with a better right tackle that maybe makes his life easier on the other side? Possibly. Is he going to be able to play for a championship caliber team? Yeah, how important is that to him? I mean, he could end up playing with a really good line. There might be some teams that would love to have a right guard. I think I can think of a couple off the top of my head that would love to swap him in there. But are they a team that's going to be winning Super Bowls? Hey, Trey's got a couple of rings, so maybe that's not as high on his list. Maybe and even though the blood clots and all of those health issues appear to be completely behind him, I mean, if you're Trey Smith, you may be thinking of this is that, you've got you want to maximize this contract, that this is your one chance that you are guaranteed, because even if you do hit free agency again at 28, all it takes is an injury and you won't be necessarily a $25 million player in 3 years. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. And, and there's one inescapable thing for me that when it comes down to this deadline looming for the July 15th is that, Brett Veach and deadlines is usually when things get done. I mean, there haven't been a lot of times that Brett Veach beats a deadline substantially with getting a deal done. I mean, even Patrick, when they got his deal done, I mean, yes, that's the outlier of them all. But remember, I mean, that was about this exact same time in July when they got that deal done. So something could pop out of them, all of a sudden in the middle of the night, all of a sudden it gets this deal done with no smoke, no noise ahead of time. It's entirely possible. But, the fact that, both sides seem to think that something was going to get done in the spring, and now here we are at the deadline with nothing done. I don't know if something is going to get done.
That's where I'm sitting right now, is I think it is less likely at this point, although completely agree that the deadline is the impetus that mostly makes the world go round in the league, let alone in Kansas City. But that's a short-term goal, is getting this next season squared away so you have a little bit of cap space to play with so that whatever goes awry, you can try to coordinate. It's not necessarily the long-term play, which I think is more important. I'm going to tell you guys why coming up next. This is easy. Summer sports, they're in full swing, and when you're ready to get under those baseball lights, golf on the green, or take on that high-stakes soccer action, is that a thing? FanDuel's the best way to do it, no matter what. Even if you are the other football fan, it can make it that much more exciting. You're already in the flow of the action. Why not make it more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get into it right away. During it, while you're getting sunburned on the beach, you can be in the action. I've been using FanDuel forever to track my favorite matchups, keep it fresh with new daily promotions. They're fun ways to bet. There's fun ways to get into new sports, different sports, and things that you love already. Right now, if you're new to FanDuel, you're in the business because new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if that first bet wins. Open up the FanDuel app today and get over there at FanDuel.com to get started. Matt, FanDuel's fun. Getting into the action is fun. This waiting for action is terrible, and I can't stand it. And so that makes me turn to prognostication. And I want to really draw the distinction between what Trey Smith is right now, and that is, as of this taping, a right guard that is very good. I would not say top 3 elite, on a short-term contract for $23 million. Tomorrow, he could be the same guard on a long-term deal, or we could have to wait a year, and he could end up being a year better, more seasoned, I would call it. Same level guard on now 120% of the tag in a retag situation. I think the short-term is important, but I don't think it's as long as the longer-term play. So the one thing in my head that they must avoid is the animosity that comes with, I don't want to play on the tag, you're not going to give me a contract, and then he ends up getting tagged a second time. I don't think the Chiefs can afford it, and I think it's the worst play of the 3. How do you see it?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, because you look at the tag situation and next year, hey, that would probably be at least a minimum with 120% raise, at least $28 million. Little too much for a guard. So even with the exorbitant raises that, the salary cap and just, prices in general, and let's face it, I mean, guard prices have been going up a lot in the last couple of years. So it's just kind of the next position that seems to be getting the big booms. And there's a lot of difficult things to that, like you're talking about with looking at the long term, because you do look to next year's off season okay, if you tag Trey Smith, and now you're talking about carrying a $28 million tag for any length of time, just a gentle reminder, right now, the Chiefs are projected over the cap to be $37 million over the cap next year for the liabilities that they have right now. And you're not going to be able to get rid of all of those or fix all of those on the beginning of the new league year day. So you take Trey Smith and you add him on there. Now you're suddenly $65 million over. Now, it'll be whittled down a little bit because the Chiefs might carry over some, but it's not going to be maybe more than maybe $5 million into next year. So that's not a huge amount. You could possibly have, maybe there's a couple of cuts that you could make, but nothing substantial. You're going to rework Patrick Mahomes' contract next year. That's just the reality of it. I don't know that you're necessarily getting it done, before the beginning of the new league year. Maybe you do, but even that's not going to get you all the way there. You're going to have some other things done, and you're also going to have the salary cap go up more than over the cap is expecting, and a lot of the projectors. And I will say this, you look at over the cap, Spotrac, any of them, they all have very conservative increases for the salary cap right now, like 5.5%. That's not the rate at which the cap has been going up. It's been going up substantially more than that. So it's entirely possible that the cap, gets you $10 to $15 million of that, but it's still $65 million that you're dealing with. So something's got to give. And that's one of the things is that you have, if you're going to keep Trey Smith long-term, a second year under the cap, under the tag isn't going to happen. You can afford it 1 year. You can't afford it 2. And if you tag Trey Smith, now you have to trade him, and everybody in the league knows that. So, that's the difficult thing you get into, because if you're Brett Veach, you don't want to tag a player and have one of two things happen. One, the dude signs the tag, in which case, you're really kind of hosed. And two, get into a situation where you have to withdraw the tag. Neither one of those are winning situations. So, and that was the situation the Chiefs were in last year with L'Jarius Sneed. They tagged him, but they had to make a deal quickly because they couldn't hold on to that tag for very long. Worked out, but that wasn't 120%. That wasn't a second tag. So that gets into it. And I just see that, hey, if you're not going to keep Trey Smith long-term and you're keeping him for one more season, you're limiting your options as far as the ability to get value out of him moving on to a new team. Your value may just be a third-round comp pick.
And that is probably the second worst scenario that I can think of. So the best scenario, if we're going to flip it here to the sunny side, is that some here, whether it's in this next week, and folks, we will be with you on, we're going to call it Trey Day, because that will be the determining factor on the 15th. And if not, you can still have conversations. You just can't execute anything until the new league year next year. Does that, in your mind, make it, if they don't get it done here, does it make it more or less likely that they do reach something during the season, during the postseason, before league year next year?
You have that tough window because, if you get to the July 15th, remember, he's only playing under the tag. So you're not, you can talk extension, but you can't strike a deal until after the year, and things can change. Injuries can change the equation, that kind of thing. There can be some things that pop up. I could even see there are possibilities that if even before July 15th, if the Chiefs are able to get a deal done with Trey, there's even the possibility of a couple of things you could do. One, you could structure a contract, even with guaranteed money, that makes it a tradable contract, that makes it so that next year you have the option where you could trade Trey Smith, isn't going to come back on you with a bunch of dead money. That guaranteed money would go to the next team. That's a difficult needle to thread, but it's possible. The other possibility is that, you just deal with the tag, and then you do try and get something done in that window between the end of the Super Bowl or the end of the season, whichever it may be, and the beginning of the new league year. That's, like I said, it's a tough window, but that may be your only option.
I think that's probably the most likely option as it stands now. If you had to pick one of these scenarios or any other that you have that I have not pulled out of my hair brain, What does your gut tell you happens right now?
I mean, I think there's nothing that I think is more than a 50% possibility. I mean, I think that the most likely option is probably, I'd say it's something like 40% that, that Trey probably plays under the tag. And I think every single day that percentage goes up a little bit more, that we don't hear anything. Like I said, it's always a possibility that something gets done at the last minute. Chiefs have been known for that. We've seen out of nowhere on a Friday night, all of a sudden it's like, oh, Chris Jones is staying in Kansas City. And then 2 hours later, we got a deal done. So it can happen. It's just that there's something that just tells me that the fact that this deal didn't get done when these two sides wanted, and that there just isn't any smoke, tells you that the Chiefs are okay with him playing under the tag. And unless they're willing to step up and make it worth his while, which would be, a contract with at least 45 to 50 million guaranteed, a 3-year deal that would, keep him and get him at that level and get him back on the free agency in 28. That's a pretty player friendly deal. And it's not one that I'm sure that the Chiefs can entirely afford with, like we mentioned. I mean, they've got other priorities, other players. You've got to deal with the remnants of the Patrick Mahomes and Chris Jones deals, which, like I said, I think absolutely Patrick Mahomes is playing under a new contract starting next season. They're going to rework that deal, and that $78 million cap number over the next 2 seasons. So that will change, but you've still got to feel like we talked about. You've got to figure out the futures for Trent McDuffie. You got to figure it out for George Karlaftis, and there's going to be other players that you want to keep too. You're the Brett Veach. You can't have everything. So I think that's the most likely of the plurality of options, is that he plays under the tag. I think the second most likely is that they do get something done. And like I said, I think that's what parameters of a deal would have to look like. I think the chances of trade, those kind of things are pretty minuscule. Could they work out something like that Chris Jones, 1-year deal, where you get a 1-year deal done that maybe just looks a little different than the franchise tag, so that it, that's a possibility too. I mean, but to me right now, 40-45% scenarios, or like I said, it's in that he plays into the tag or a deal gets done. And I think right now tag is more likely.
Well, and how that goes down and what it means does have an impact on how this team can get to a championship. What that looks like is that the happier you have your right guard, the happier that offensive line is going to be, and that's going to help that championship. How it breaks down, coming up next. Breaking down is what I do here on Locked On Chiefs, folks. Make sure you check out Chiefs Digest, where it's much calmer than what I'm doing, because I get a little bit tied up, Matt, because every little thing, especially this time of year, the tinfoil goes on, and I see impact, because we have to admit, at this point, you have lost Joe Thuney, made the conscious decision, right? The veteran in the room is now Juwan Taylor and Trey Smith and Creed Humphrey. That's the way that it is. Losing part of that triumvirate, especially knowing that the contract situation with Juwan Taylor likely means he is not in Kansas City next year. Not foregone conclusion, but it's likely. That means the 2 pillars of your offensive line are 65 and Creed. Does that play into your calculus like I think it is playing into the calculus of the team?
Yeah, and that's why, the Jalen Moore signing continues to make sense even after the Josh Simmons selection, because, Chiefs played that out in a lot of different scenarios. And they obviously knew when they signed Jalen Moore that there was entirely a possibility they were taking a left tackle with the first pick in the first round. So, what's your option there? Well, if Jalen Moore ends up being your right tackle in 2026, that's a fine solution. I mean, that's a veteran who's going to be a 6th year in the league. That should be another leader. And so if you end up with, hey, if Trey Smith is not your right guard in 2026 and it's Hunter Norzad or Mike Caliendo, then you've got 2 veterans that they're sandwiched between. So you're feeling pretty good about that. I mean, you've still got to address right tackle for the future, and, starting in 2027, but the Chiefs are hoping at the very least that Jalen Moore signing both one gave them insurance for left tackle for 2025, but most importantly, gave them a right tackle for 2026. So that's what it would look like. The puzzle pieces would look like right now. Now it's entirely possible. Hey, maybe the Chiefs feel like that they find another answer at tackle and they move on from Jalen Moore. I mean, that's an option, but Jalen Moore in 2026 is actually kind of a bargain after the money that they gave to him this year. I mean, he's kind of a more affordable next year to keep than he even would be this year. So that's why, Moore kind of, to me, really fits into that puzzle. What you're hoping for, obviously, and you need, is for Kingsley Suamataia to be everything that you need, because if he's not the answer at left guard, well, now you're looking at trying to find two guards for 2026. And like I said, we go back to it. Maybe one is Hunter Norzad. Maybe one's Mike Caliendo. Maybe one is another guy that you found. Obviously, the Chiefs have a couple of undrafted free agents that they think can play guard. So there's always a possibility that you found a diamond in the rough there at that spot. But if you're the Chiefs, what you're really banking on, and the idea is that, that you've got Josh Simmons on the left side, Jalen Moore on the right, Creed Humphrey in the middle, Kingsley's hit at left guard, and now all you're doing is putting in a right guard who's been with you for a while next year. And hey, if you take a guard next year in the draft or you sign one in free agency, maybe that's a possibility too. But most importantly, if you're the Chiefs, you're looking for one offensive lineman next year and not multiple offensive linemen.
And that's where I come back to, is you need the leadership and you need somebody to provide the continuity. Maybe Jalen Moore can do that. I don't know yet. I won't know until, week 14, whether that is a legitimate possibility. But in the meantime, in lieu of it, it puts that much pressure on a championship run this season with this group, with him either under the tag or under a contract, doesn't really matter. But it's one more signal to me that the situation that we're looking at, when we take a step back from it, is another possibility at this is an all-out push to get there yet again, before you have to make those changes, before you're forced into not leaderless, but a changing of the leadership on the offensive line. And I think that's key, especially for Suamataia, especially for Simmons. Having two young guys coming in there, that plays an effect. So with that pressure on top of it, I don't know that it makes a whole lot of sense to not give up that guaranteed money that we've been talking about in lieu of putting that pressure, not having the ability to add anything else. We've heard all the talk about the offense, trying to push the ball again, et cetera. We can only hope. And for the love of God, Andy, run just a little bit more. It'll help everything. I keep telling you this. But does that pressure weigh on, I know it weighs on the team in terms of their strategy. Does it weigh on Trey? Because there's a lot of connections here. And as you said, rings are important, but are they still? In your estimation here, how much does this season and this championship possibility mean for him and his career, not just his emotions?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Something that I've thought about, in the sense that you're right. I mean, this to me, when you're talking about paying your right guard $23.4 million for 1 year and keeping him, rather than, taking the opportunity to maybe replenish your draft picks and maybe bring some, get extra talent in the future, and putting yourself into a position where you're, threading, like I said, a really, really tight needle of trying to keep Trey Smith beyond this year. If you don't have a deal with him going into the season, then you really are going all in. I mean, I feel like this is maybe the most all-in move for, one championship that Brett Veach will have made since, 2019, and all of the aggressive moves that they made that year to try and get over the hump, and maybe even, 2020 as far as rebuilding the offensive line. But, even though this is one single move, it's a pricey, big move that I think moves the needle more for you winning a title in 2025 than anything else. I mean, you might be even sacrificing a little bit of title chances in future years that by keeping Trey Smith. But you've got a championship team right now, and keeping Trey gives you the best chance to win right now. Like I said, it might, having that much money tied into it and costing you a little bit in the future years, and maybe limiting what you get back from Trey in compensation, that can hurt you. But this is your best chance at trying to win a Super Bowl in 2025. Trey's got a couple of rings, so maybe that won't be as much pressure on him. But If he goes into the season knowing, hey, this might be the last year in Kansas City, I think he went in the last year thinking that it could be his last year in Kansas City. And I think that for some guys, I think it could absolutely affect them, that especially, knowing, wait a minute, I got to play, careful here. I can't get hurt, all of these things. I felt like Trey played, with a little bit of that pressure last year. And you know what? I didn't notice it taking a toll on him at all. If anything, I think I saw him just continue to take more and more leadership steps last year, as being the guy that, tries to, one, raise the level of play along that offensive line, but two, be the leader who kind of shepherds everybody and brings the rookies under their wings. I think he's come a long way in that in the last couple of years. And I think we're just continuing to see more and more of it. I think Creed's, getting a little bit of that too. They're both quiet leaders. Trey's a little bit more outspoken than Creed is. And I should probably say a lot more outspoken because Creed's pretty quiet as it is. But I mean, Trey's going to be your leader. I mean, it's the guy that you're depending on. And do I see him slacking off in that regard? No, I really don't. And I don't see the pressure getting to him because this is a dude that's faced a lot of pressure and a lot of setbacks in his life, football wise, personally, everything professionally across the board. So I don't think dealing with this pressure, I don't think it's anything that he hasn't seen before, and he knows how to deal with it.
Yeah, and they have to. And there is no next year. You cannot rely on anything past this season. Ask Aaron Rodgers. That's the way that goes. Matt, thank you for the insight. We very much appreciate you. You can check Matt out at ChiefsDigest.com, Chiefs Digest here on YouTube, as well as 41 is the mic, and over on 41, where you make those appearances that are so fun. I appreciate that. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Ryan. It's always good to talk to you. I know we're coming up on our 9-year anniversary. I need to find out when that debut show was. So,
it was September 16th. I will tell you that.
Wow.
We were running a little bit behind that year.
Wow. I thought it was a couple of weeks earlier than that. So
no, it should have been is the problem. Network was very new back then. But folks, we appreciate you being here this whole time. Matt's been here the whole time, so don't you miss anymore. Like, sub, hit the bell, get over to see his content. Check out RGR for me and NFL 33. We're going to have a good time. We're going to be back tomorrow. We're going to continue getting ready for what training camp is going to look like, but we are on high alert for any Trey news, and we will break in if we need to. Thanks for spending your day with us today. We very much appreciate it. We're going to keep it rolling into season 9 here on Locked On Chiefs. Make sure you check out another Locked On show for your next listen. We'll talk to you tomorrow.